Guest with us, and we say good morning and welcome to Douglas Gordon. Morning, Mr. Gordon.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for joining
How
us.
are you?
I am doing well. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you.
Great. Good to have you, and thanks for coming in to spend a little time with us. We're interested in your successes, your stories. Understand you were originally from Trinidad and Tobago before migrating at the age of 10 to England. What caused the move to England, first of all?
I was a minor, and my mother decided we were moving to England, so I had to go with her. But in essence, I think her motivation was just to seek ways for us to broaden our horizons from the Caribbean and seek additional opportunities overseas.
Yes, to improve your lot.
Indeed.
What was life like back then growing up in Trinidad and Tobago?
Trinidad was great. My parents split when I was 6, so I went through a number of different transitions where that was concerned. I saw my mother go from being an employed nurse and medical record librarian to an entrepreneur. She started a nursing home, and in a short span of time, she did very well from 5 or 6 till 10 when we migrated.
Yes.
But you also saw the value of hard work, application, commitment, but also incredible love and care for her children at the same time. So, now I can have a better context for some of those lessons. But, I enjoyed Trinidad. I played a lot of football. I moved a lot of schools because every time anything went sideways, my mother was solution, because she was so busy with work, but just put him in a different school. That was her solution for everything.
Yes.
But it was rich positive memories, and so it was good. It was a very good foundation for the rest of my life.
And moving to the UK at such a tender age, with already some formed experiences and cultural identity as a Trinbagonian, were there challenges immediately that you had to, confront, to overcome in the UK?
Well, absolutely. I tell folks that I didn't know, when I moved to the UK, I found out I was black, because before that I was Douglas. And now that I was this minority,
yes,
this became sort of my primary identity. Yeah, it became my primary identity. So, I went to, a school where the only 2 children of color were myself and my sister. And, that required some adjustments. That required finding ways to navigate and learn to associate and relate to people who, they were hampered by the differences.
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't see past them, and you had to find ways to connect with them and to, just to have your day smooth and friendly. So it was a really challenging experience, but at the same time, richly rewarding in the ways that it informed me for my future.
Yes, I imagine you'd have had to develop some survival instincts as well.
Yes, it's also things that you learn as people evolve. Like I was very good at sports. I played a lot of football and cricket. And so those ended up being assets for me in the sense that, people got along with you, or they wanted to get along with you, if you will, with football. But you also saw the reality is that when you sort of progressed beyond a certain point that was maybe advanced than some of your peers, how that sort of camaraderie turned to jealousy and turned to some very, unfortunate and hostile behavior. Mm-hmm. So it's just a lot that you had to learn and navigate. And, bless my mother, as protective as she was, she really got to a point very early on where she was like, listen, I can't fight your battles for you. You need to figure out how you're going to sort this out, because I'm not coming back to the school every week,
yes,
for problems. And so, you were isolated, but at the same token, that's sort of where the baseline, the foundation for being resilient and creative and finding solutions to your challenges sort of was embedded for me.
Yes. But then you would go to New York by the age of 15. So it really, I imagine, would pull out of you all of your instinctive, survival skills, navigational skills, even. How different was it? How different was it? Trinidad to England to New York. in such a short span for such a young man?
I think for me, I was very fortunate in that I have a very resilient nature. And I think that I have a nature that's very positive and forward looking. So, I took all of these different opportunities, if you will, as just, challenges and adventures, so that was my perspective. I really liked New York. I liked the fact that people were blunt and straightforward. It was a sort of rubber meets the road type of mentality. You either did it or you didn't do it. All of those things sort of were very attractive to me in terms of just ways of living life.
Yes.
But you also got to experience, what I loved about England was the tradition. I loved about Trinidad was the heritage and the culture that we had in the Caribbean. But England, I also appreciated the tradition. I appreciate some elements of the formality that were inherent in the culture. But New York and the U.S., I really respected that sort of sense of you can achieve whatever you set your mind to. It's all there for the taking, so to speak.
Yes.
But again, what you also get a very insightful look at the different racial considerations in some of these territories. Like the U.S. has. It was just so different, but in New York in particular, people were just honest. There were people that I could literally feel that they wanted nothing to do with me because I was black, and that was okay for me. It was in England where people tended to want to get along. Yeah, so it's these little things that you take away from scenarios that really sort of, they're lessons if you see them for what they are, as opposed to, challenges that you don't get to overcome or you sort of ingrain in your whole DNA as you go through life.
Yes. And I imagine being a father now that all of that wisdom from your experiences would be infused into upbringing, especially daughters.
Yeah, but, definitely. I mean, life has shown me the incalculable importance of a father to a daughter. I don't know why. I haven't studied those aspects of life, but without a doubt, there's a special role that a father plays in his daughter's life. And I've seen that from folks who've not had that or have had that. And so for me, it's a special obligation to try to be the absolute best father that I can be to them in preparing them for the world. Sometimes I think we try to insulate our children from every single challenge that they're going to face in life. And I personally don't think that that's the answer. I think that it's important that my job is first and foremost to prepare them for life. And sometimes that means disappointment. Sometimes that means not getting their way. Sometimes that means that they have to find solutions to their own challenges, but I want to be there and hold their hand and let them know that they're loved. They might be disciplined. They might not get what they want, but there's never a time to question my love for them. And so these are some of the things that life has taught me and prepared me for. And I want to sort of stand up and be that father for them.
Indeed. I think life was preparing you for what eventually you would end up doing. I see a Caribbean Wellness Expo on the horizon that we'll get to in a moment. But before you got there, banking and all kinds of studies, were you feeling your way around? Were you trying to navigate to set your compass?
Well, as you get older, you can look back at things and you have a different appreciation for the decisions you made along the path. My father's been in media from inception, if you want to call it that. He's well known in the space in Trinidad. And so for me, I always had a passion for media. I always had a passion for reading newspapers, magazines, understanding how, TV worked. But I also had this sort of, as sons do, I guess, this desire to have my own definition, my own sort of persona, my own separate identity. And so for a very long time, I resisted going into it, even though I had this calling, if you will, to it. So, what was important for me in leaving Atlanta and going back to Trinidad was, the one constant in my life was my father's home. So all these places I lived around the world, he was in that home the whole time. And so, this is where sort of ambition and personal development also meets with, some of these hard to define elements of our lives. And it was just that sort of one structure that stood there. So I always had this calling to go back to Trinidad And I've always had this passion to do things significant for the Caribbean. Despite all my opportunities globally and in a way that, my life has already presented and given me the fortune to be able to pursue them, I feel this really strong urge and desire and commitment to doing things that make a difference for the Caribbean. And so that was always my calling to go back.
One of those things would result in the premier Cannabis Business Conference and Expo, CANEX, which you founded back in 2016. Talk to me about CANEX.
Yeah, so, CANEX came at a time just post decriminalization and the introduction of the regulatory framework for medicinal cannabis in Jamaica. And the thing that really struck me was, I had the parallel to the steel pan in Trinidad where, we invented the instrument, but because we failed to seize the economic and commercial opportunities, in many ways, Trinidad got cut out, or Trinidadians for that matter, got cut out of some of those commercial benefits. And here I saw an opportunity where, Jamaica, which has been the sort of flag bearer, if you will, for cannabis and ganja for so many years through its music, its culture, its Rastafarian sort of heritage, you also saw in that moment, that's what I saw, tremendous fear. You saw people who were attached to the industry for so long before it became legal, really concerned about being cut out of it, and what you ended up with was just this undercurrent of fear that people would come in and take over. And I wanted to do something as a Caribbean person. I just, they say sometimes when you see something, you can't unsee it. And my thing was, if this whole boat passes Jamaica by simply because, fear ruled the roost, or someone didn't sort of look to see how we could formalize it and put a professional platform that could bring people together and give it a really good shot, then I would be, very, very disappointed in myself for letting that happen. And so that was my motivator, to be honest, is really to create something where we could have a professional platform to bring people together, exchange ideas, build strategic relationships, facilitate growth of the industry. And that's really what the genesis of CANEX in 2016.
Yeah. So in the 6 years since then, what are the plans for this year?
Well, the industry has shifted tremendously globally and locally. There's been a lot of turmoil. There've been a lot of unfulfilled promises, if you will, or things that have not yet been realized. But at the same token, underlying all of that is this tremendous opportunity. Cannabis is going to be a massive industry in 5 to 10 years globally. It already is in the US, it already is in Canada. It's growing in the UK. I mean, it's real numbers, real contributions to GDP, people getting really, good jobs that are helping them to build, lives with their families. And that's a reality that also Jamaica should be enjoying. And so, for me, this is a sort of a rainstorm moment in the industry, but it's one that one has to press through because I truly see it. I truly see that this is something that can change lives in Jamaica and bring tremendous health and economic prosperity to the island and the extended Caribbean. And so, that's really what I push on to do. So, from that, we're working with a company called Arrival Productions, and thankfully we've gotten very good support from PRI Wellness, which is setting up here in Jamaica, to produce a documentary. And that's going to tell the story of Jamaican cannabis, not just its history and not just where it stands at present, but where it should occupy as far as, its place in the global landscape around this very important, plant-based industry. So those are some of the things we're working on, and just, making the pivots, like you mentioned, the Wellness Expo, that we think will expand the industry and help us to sustain this enterprise and grow it.
All right. We haven't much time, Douglas. Remind me, when is the expo and where?
Sure, it's the cannabis. It's a conference and expo. It takes place October 20th and 21st in Montego Bay, the Convention Center.
Excellent. And we didn't even get to touch on your work with the Marley family on Natural Mystic, but we are so happy that you were able to harness the potential of the Jamaican cannabis in this way and to showcase it to the world and bring us just rewards for all of that. Looking forward to a successful Wellness Expo. Thank you so much for joining us in the guest room. Douglas Gordon, founder of Canex Jamaica. The BBC World News is next, brought to you by Hyundai or Hyundai Jamaica. Modern premium vehicles. Get